Dr. Stokes, could you please tell us about your background as a Professor of Psychology at Deakin University and elsewhere, including your research and positions held, especially those that relate to safety and brain injury?
Thanks for the question, Mel. I started out, I've done a number of degrees. I started out actually in fine arts and photography, and then moved through business studies and ended up in psychology, and that was at La Trobe University where I did my PhD after having done an undergraduate and an honours degree in psychology, and that was in the late 80s, and did my PhD at La Trobe, where I became a staff member eventually and worked in a field of neuroanatomy and teaching neuroanatomy to a group of neuropsychology students. After which I then started work at Monash University at the Accident Research Centre, specialising in injury prevention, and then specialising in particular in paediatric injury prevention. And during my tenure there I actually became appointed to the board of Kidsafe. When I was appointed to the board of Kidsafe, after some time I eventually was asked, it was put upon me to become the President of Kidsafe, which I thankfully no longer have to do. Someone else has that honour. So I've been involved in child injury and neuroscience and neurological injury since the early 90s and child injury since the late 90s. I was appointed to Deakin University in 2002, and I was appointed to Associate Professor in 2004 after coming here. So I've been an Associate Professor for some time. What I can tell you about my background in research with neurological injury is that we've done a number of studies looking at, in particular, children with autism and the neurology of autism. So I've focused mainly on neurology of autism these days, whereas previously we have done a number of studies on the sequelae and consequences of childhood injuries, particularly closed head injuries amongst many others, toward outcomes for children. So a fairly diverse series of studies and a fairly diverse background.
Dr. Stokes, could you please tell us, in your expert opinion, what you think about children wearing helmets during contact sport, like junior Aussie rules football?
Well, I'm actually somewhat concerned about those, Mel, and I'm concerned for a number of reasons. The first of those is that once a child's wearing a helmet, they may mistakenly assume that this confers a higher degree of protection and therefore that they can play harder. Or other players may assume that they can play harder with that child wearing that helmet, which is not true. In fact, the helmet is there to ameliorate the impact, and will only ameliorate an impact to a degree, and that degree is not total. So what can actually occur is children wearing a helmet become more a target, and not only wearing a helmet becoming more a target, the child themselves may misestimate just how protected they are. At the same time, children can then play, when they're playing harder, they may in fact use their helmet as a weapon, thinking that protects them when in fact it doesn't. So the wearing of a helmet prima facie is not necessarily a good thing. Now, the studies of helmet wearing in sports have only really been done with sports such as cycling, and very few studies have been done with other sports to show that their helmets are of any good or any value, particularly in sports that they're being recommended for in Australia, such as Australian rules football or rugby. And there is no good evidence at the moment to suggest that these helmets are suitable for these sports and will protect in these sports. It is an assumption, and one that I think that is manifestly untrue.